there is a mentality thinking that, well, this is the way it has to be. Like as a contractor, you're supposed to work your ass off. You're supposed to work long hours, and that's the way it is. And I promise it's not. Like businesses are meant to benefit our lives, not to suck the life out of us. And I think that's a mentality that a lot of us have to break, is thinking that it has to be the certain way. It really doesn't. And but you've got to have these higher trajectories, like be at the freaking piano recital, because there are systems in place that you can be there and still make that amount of money, if not more. And it really does take a determination to be like, do you want to keep this current lifestyle? Do you want to keep spending, 17, 18 hours a day just grinding away at this business? Because it doesn't have to be like that.
Welcome to the Onsite Podcast. We chat with contractors, educators, industry professionals about the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So without further ado, let's fucking get into it.
What's up, everyone? We are back. Episode, I don't even lost track about how many episodes we're on, but today we have David. David is one of the contractors that we've been working with for the past couple months, and he is a concrete contractor. He's also venturing into the coaching, and I'm super excited to jump into this conversation with you, David. Thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon.
David, so tell us a little bit about your concrete construction company. Where you guys set up? What do you do? And how's that been going?
Yeah, we're based out of Farmington, Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, and been in business for 4 years now. And we do spike into other states surrounding in Wyoming and Idaho, a little bit of Nevada and whatnot. But yeah, mainly doing commercial jobs, still have some residential clients, but into the commercial and government space. And that's kind of where I found a home, and definitely better margins there and things like that. But yeah, have 7 full-time employees, and just have some good systems set up so I can be mainly in the office and doing other things, and staying organized and keep the business growing, being the entrepreneur of the business. So
awesome. Well, so you weren't always in concrete, and and commercial projects are probably pretty demanding. I mean, the clientele will be somewhat demanding. There's huge investments, huge expectations, and if things aren't done properly, obviously, well, I mean, the work will be self-explanatory at that point. So, what made you land on concrete?
Yeah,
as an industry.
Well, my background is in excavation, and with kind of like a concrete emphasis. But my family, they owned a construction company growing up, and my grandpa, he grew it from nothing, and kind of like I did with mine, and he turned it into a multi-million-dollar business. And the residential, it's an interesting industry because it has a certain dynamic that you don't get in commercial, and vice versa as well. But especially this year, it's more prevalent that the margins in residential concrete and construction in general is just the margins aren't as great as they are in commercial construction. And a large part of that is because commercial construction, like you said, comes with those challenges. You have to carry bigger insurance policies. You can't just have your normal personal truck insurance. You have to get commercial policies, and you have to have all of your OSHA stuff set up. So it's a lot more involved, not to mention when you do a commercial job, if you have $100,000 commercial job, you may have to come out of pocket $50,000 or $60,000, which a lot of contractors don't have to start. And so there is that barrier of entry with getting into those bigger jobs. But the benefit is that you do have higher margins with that. And one thing I forgot to mention is that you have to usually wait a long time to get paid. So it's difficult for contractors to get in on it. And so through my struggles and trying to get into that realm, it's been something that I've discovered these little cheat codes and things that I've been able to do it and get into it, and continually, mostly like I have now, do commercial and government construction, and not have to have those pains that normal contractors have to go through. So
for anybody that's listening that is doing concrete, they probably start with residential. And I know that you're building out a coaching program, and excited to to help you do that. But for contractors that are like listening and that are doing sidewalks and driveways, everything that you just said sounds a bit probably horrifying for them or unobtainable. So, A, they're not going to have that kind of capital to put up. B, they're not going to be able to sit and wait to get paid. And so what are just like a simple little thing that they could incorporate into their business that would kind of give them a little bit of positional value that they could actually, potentially look at that? I know that working with you would probably obviously also paint a greater picture on those steps and procedures that you can incorporate into becoming a larger commercial contractor for concrete. But what are some things that they could do to kind of position them a little bit better from residential to commercial?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my background, I've been in quite a few different industries, and one of the industries that I've been in, and I actually have another company where I help contractors get working capital and equipment loans. And so I've been in business funding. I have a history of that with my own company and working for other companies. And so I came into my construction company in 2001 with focusing on concrete with a little bit different emphasis than I think a lot of other concrete contractors come into it, because most of the time these guys were probably really good finishers. Maybe they were the foreman of a larger company, and they were one day they just woke up like a lot of us do and be like, hey, I can do this by myself. And so they take those specialties that they have as a technician in concrete and take it in thinking that that's the secret to starting a business. And just like most of us, when we start, we're like, holy crap, like there's 20 other things I have to do now with employee management, HR issues, estimating, accounting, all of these things that normal business, just part of the normal business process. And I started this with those in mind. And so the way I started my company is I immediately started setting the company up to start obtaining trade lines and obtaining business credit. And knowing that I would need some help like that if I was going to get into some of those bigger jobs, and I didn't have the capital to be able to do it. And so it's I started it with that process, and over a six to 8 month period, I obtained all these trade lines, and that moved into another realm of just building that credibility with banks, and so I was able to obtain lines of credit and just these supplier credit lines that were able to float me for a lot of the time period that I needed for those bigger jobs. So I'd probably say the other concrete contractors, one of the main things you can do is start to set up your company so that you look attractive to banks, because that is by far the easiest way to get some of that funding. But you have to look a certain way with to the banks to be able to get those. But I'd probably say that's one of the first steps I'd recommend to concrete guys that are trying to get into the bigger realms.
So clean up their business, operate more efficiently, have good books so that the bank is attracted to them. And then obviously acquiring the project is its own entirety, which is some of the things that, you will work with them on. And by the time this is aired, when you're listening to this, David will be looking for about 10 guys to work with one-on-one to help implement some of these systems. Without question, you'll obviously gain some value, and I'm excited to dive into that a little bit later on in this episode. But, David, you didn't just wake up one day and become a concrete guy. It sounds like you've got a lot of different, things in the background. Tell us about, who you are and how you became who you are today.
Digging into the closet and finding the skeletons. That's this was the question I was hoping to avoid. But no, it's all of those things, the mistakes from the past and things like that. They lead us to where we're at now, right? So you can't be ashamed of them. But don't look at it like we're digging into the closet, uncovering, I've gone through a lot of shit in my life, good, bad, and ugly. And I think what I've learned to appreciate in my 40s is that there's levels to life, and there's levels to business, and you have to go through some shit, significant stuff. Like I remember when I was 26, I was like, I need to have my life figured out, and I didn't have it figured out. And I was like, wow, okay, like. And then I was in my 30s, and I was like, oh, okay, like it feels more figured out now. But now as I'm in my 40s, I'm like, oh, okay, like I got this shit like figured out now. But as I enter closer into my 50s, I will probably think the same thing. And I think like, when we go back, it's not about bad things that we've experienced. I think it's mostly about like the true growth that we've been able to experience from our journey. So, and I've heard your story a little bit, and I want to hear more about it. So feel totally comfortable sharing it in as great a detail as you feel comfortable. Yeah, no, it's that's totally true, and I say it kind of jokingly about the skeletons because we all have them, and they really do shape where we've come from. And I think as we start getting into the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I think we start to see, like, when you're in the middle of the crap, like a lot of concrete contractors are, and contractors in general, that like sometimes the problems that the construction industry throws at you, you're like, shit, man, like, and especially if you have families and all the other obligations that normal human beings have, it starts to weigh on you, and you get bogged down in that the drama of it, I guess. But after that passes, and then you get into these realms, you look back and be like, holy crap, that shaped who I am, and that gave me this opportunity, or it gave me this new perspective. And so I am grateful for that, and especially looking back now, like I have had a silver spoon in my mouth, so to speak, growing up. My dad didn't make a lot of money growing up, but as soon as I hit my 20s, my grandpa had the construction company. He was a multimillionaire, and he had built things for us grandkids. And so for probably like 5 or 6 years, I had monthly, like about $550 a month that was coming in just for the benefit of being a grandson to my grandpa. And so I had that. And then another set of grandparents gave me $15,000 at one point. And then the construction grandpa, he gave me $90,000, which was supposed to be set aside to buy a house, which I didn't do. And I tried to start another company. And so I just crapped all that money down the drain. And then he had also given me another $62,000 after that. And through all of these opportunities, I didn't amount to anything. Like I couldn't get anything going. And given all the opportunity that most people never get, I couldn't make it happen. And it was right after that last payment of $62,000 that I received that I was in massive debt from, I had a company that I had started right before COVID, went over to China a couple of times. We were manufacturing athletic horse boots, like protective horse equipment, and went over to China, came back January 2020. So basically right when COVID started. And if we would have stayed in China for 3 weeks longer, we would have actually been trapped there for several months. And so it was kind of a blessing, but came back and never received our product from China. And we had paid them all this money for engineering and stuff like that. And I'd put all the money I had into it. My business partner put tons of money into it there. And long story short, it didn't. COVID just dropped everybody off, and I had to file bankruptcy. And so that was August of 2021 when I filed for bankruptcy. And so despite all of these amazing chances that I was given by the universe, just couldn't make it happen. And so, but because of those things, and if anybody knows anything about bankruptcy, when you start the process, when you file, the day that you file, you can't have any money in your bank account. Like you have to be $0. And I had a pickup truck. I had a 23-year-old pickup truck, and that was all that I had. And that's what I started this construction company with. And so it's just a testament to that you really don't need much to try to get to a certain success level, because now 2025 at the end of this year will be well over 7 figures with this company that I started in 2021. And so, but all of those opportunities that I was given with this money and couldn't make anything happen. And then finally, when I had zero, that's when it pulled out all of these things in me, like this grit and determination, and like you got to make it happen. And so with $0, that's where I was actually able to make it happen. So
hey, we've got an ad here. Make sure to pay attention. What's up, guys? Are you a contractor or business owner looking to take things to the next level? Well, I've got something for you. The Elite Builder Society is a community that helps contractors grow and scale. For $49 a month, you can have access to 20 group coaching calls. Look, you're probably wondering, how am I going to show up to 20 calls, Brandon? That's a lot. And yeah, it is a lot for $49 a month. But every call is recorded so you can watch it at your leisure. but you get the best experience when you're live on the call with us. Okay, at the end of every webinar, there will be a Q&A where you can ask the industry expert questions that you can implement into your business. Look, if you're ready to take things to the next level for $49 a month, go to ebsworks.com and register today. I look forward to seeing you inside the community.
That's an incredible story. And there are things that for certain happened through the process of, that business that didn't succeed, that taught you lessons along the way, for sure. There are things, and what if COVID didn't exist and you did get your product and you did get that off the ground, you wouldn't be here today doing what you're doing. So sometimes the things that we least expect are blessings. And so maybe, in a roundabout way, that loss or that life experience was necessary for you to find this truer calling, because I believe that what you're capable of doing, that growth that you've achieved, is what a lot of concrete contractors are trying to achieve every day. If they're working for an existing contractor and they look at the grass and they're like, is the grass greener on the other side? Is the grass really, is it greener on the other side? And in most cases it isn't, only because they're not capable of planting it, so to speak, and maintaining it. And so, it's clear that, in a very short period of time, you've been able to grow something very effectively to over a 7-figure business, which is incredible. So, you should celebrate your wins and your victories with that for certain.
Yeah.
So David, you're a family man. You've got a family. And I'm sure that when you were going through all that shit, you weren't the only one going through it in some way, shape, or form. So tell us a little bit about your family and, what did you as a man do when you were going through the shit? Like, how did you approach your family to make them still feel protected?
No, it's very true. You don't go through this stuff on your own, and it definitely was a big challenge between my wife and I trying to understand what was happening. Especially in that situation, it's easy to go into victim mentality, that just the unfairness of the situation and things like that. But for sure, there was challenges with my wife going through that situation, which has made us stronger as well, through being able to be resilient and finally being on the other side of it, so to speak. But yeah, I've got my wife, Angie, and I got 3 kids. I've got a 10-year-old Tate and a 6-year-old Livy. And then my son, he just turned 1 year old, Knox. And so got them. And just like I've heard some of your other podcast guys, it's I have a really soft place in my heart for contractors. I was up in a job in Wyoming a little while ago doing this bank job. It sounds like I was robbing the place. No, we were doing some concrete at this bank, and
in a roundabout way, in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's I was talking with some of the plumbers up there, and I speak Spanish. Like, as a concrete contractor, you gotta know Spanish, right? But I was talking with some of the guys up there. There was a crew of Colombian guys, and every single one of the guys, we were all away from our families, but all of them, the whole time, they just talked about their wife and their kids, or their kids. It was just this is really what we all do it for, is our families, and trying to create a better life for them. And I think that's the challenge of construction, because it demands everything, especially that trajectory of starting out where you're doing everything on your own. And then you get into a stage where you start hiring people to take some of the load off. But you find that, especially with employing people, and you start to have some HR issues, and you have to, so it almost adds more onto your plate. And then you get to be big enough that you can't do everything on your own. So you have to have the employees and that high expense. And you're kind of trapped in this thing where you're constantly at it. And so if you're engaged so much with your business, trying to get it going, it's no wonder that sometimes you forget your child's name every now and then, just because of this load. But it is challenging to them, and they need to be credited for the stuff that they go through with us. And that's such a motivation, especially for me, because I wanted to be around my kids more. I didn't want to be in Wyoming for weeks at a time and not being able to see the kids, just doing FaceTime or whatever. But it is sort of our obligation as business owners to create this system, so it's not taking everything from us, and our families as well get to benefit from a great system that we build with our business. So.
So I worked a lot on the road before I started my business. I was on the road a lot, and my kids were early. So, and I knew immediately I didn't want to live this life on the road and be away from them. But when you mentioned about, the conversations being about everyone's talking about their families, it does remind me that that is what, a lot of us contractors that are on the road do. We talk about our families, and we're making these sacrifices to be away to try to build this better life. And, that was just very memorable. I know that that's what I'm doing everything for, is always for my family. But to think about it like that and it's been a long time since I worked on the road like I did before. And so looking back or thinking back through that, you wonder, do these people realize this, like the elephant in the room when you're away, where it's just like all you can think about is going home, even though you're away.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like maybe because I've also worked in the construction industry where people are on the road and the family dynamic is disastrous, right? And so there's a lot of other things that are happening on when they're not home. And that's in relation to the people that we choose, that kind of ultimately creates those circumstances. But it's so crazy for a man to leave his family, to go make sacrifices, to bring home a better life, and to be constantly thinking about these people at home. And for those people, potentially, not the kids necessarily, but those people at home, to not even give a shit, that they're gone, and almost be annoyed when they return. And I feel for a lot of people, because I know there's a lot of people that I worked with that were on the road, that experienced that toxic lifestyle. And so then they become fixated on just wanting to be away. But in your scenario, obviously that wasn't the case. You got a great wife and great people in your corner. And so that's awesome. And, I've gone through some struggles and sacrifices within my business as well over the years. And, my family's the first person to take the hit, honestly, along the way, sorry, I'm the first person. And then residually, they're kind of interconnected to that. And I think it honestly builds resilience. My mother I was raised by a single mother. Wasn't an easy life for her. She made a lot of significant sacrifices for me every day, but what taught me was that you can work your ass off and get through almost anything. And so my mom would provide for us, or for me, by just literally doing whatever the fuck it takes to get to tomorrow. So us as parents, I think we're just a different breed, and when you mix in construction into that, it really builds great people.
What's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Onsite Podcast. So here's the deal. We want to grow this show, and we need your help. It's simple. Pay the tax, share the show. That's it. Let's get back into it.
I love your story. I think it's really, inspiring for a lot of different people. Concrete, I've honestly never I've poured a sidewalk one time. That's it. I've never done like a garage pad. I've hired people to do them, but I've never done one myself. And this has never been something that interests me. I find it to be very labor intensive, obviously. But when you watch a crew work together, they're having fun. They're enjoying being outside, because they're mostly always outside or in a building. So it looks like it's a very, it's an exciting industry to be in. Anything else? Any stories particularly about projects that you want to share? So the podcast is called Onsite, and we can talk about, getting contractors on site, which is obviously what you're doing with your coaching program. But any particular projects that are really memorable for you, where it was like, oh, this is my space. Like this is what I'm meant to do.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the family situation, I mean, entrepreneurship in general is just, I think Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, he was interviewed a little while ago, and he said there was a question that was asked to him as he was ending the podcast, and he was saying, he was asked, what counsel would you give to somebody who's trying to start a business? And he said, get ready to fail. And there's a lot of failure with entrepreneurship. And then he said, being an entrepreneur is one of the hardest things that a human being can take on. And it does take a toll, especially on the family. And when us contractors are in that situation of having all of the stresses that come from construction, especially the high overhead, like 1 minute you can have 80K in the bank, and then the next you have like 300 or a negative 300. And those, a lot of times our families, like when we go home, our wives are right there. They're the only ones, in our realm that we can talk to. And so they're just taking it with us. And I would say that that's been the blessing of having you in my life, with being able to, there's just somebody else that knows about it. And especially your role this relationship that we've built, that you're there, like knowing that you have that perspective. You take a lot of that stuff, would take a lot of stuff away from my family if I was in that situation. But the nice thing about you is that after I leave our phone calls, it's just like the world doesn't seem so bleak. It's like the drama of the problems that I'm going through. I'm like, and it's just this solution oriented approach that you have, and so I'm really grateful for that. While we've been working together, it's helped to not get bogged down in that, and so
I appreciate that.
So yeah, I'm grateful for that.
And to add to that, when and we talked about this early on, and one of the things that I remember when I was going through, because I came from an industry on the road, right? I didn't want to live that life on the road. So I chose to start my own business, and it was miserable for many years. And I was alone with all my thoughts. I didn't tell my wife at the time any of the problems that I experienced. I didn't tell her anything. I tried to hold all that,
Sometimes
which most
that's
men,
a smarter decision too.
well, I mean, that's what most men will do through that process, is just, they'll just bury everything themselves. And I think that that's an unhealthy decision, but it's also really hard to do things on your own. And so what I've really tried to make myself, to the contractors that I work with, is just available to talk about the shit inside the box that you're afraid to talk to anybody about, because those are the problems that need the most work. And generally those are the problems that you're alone trying to figure out on your own. And, when you talk about entrepreneurship being a position of failure almost every time, it's like, well, it's really hard to fail when you have multiple conversations with multiple people about multiple things, about similar things. And so failure becomes a lot less inevitable in that process. And that's why I really just focus on trying to talk about the deep, dark shit that nobody wants to talk about, because those are the problems that generally need to be fixed or approached first and foremost. I just didn't have that. And so I'm glad that you recognize that, because that truly is the goal on the conversations that I have with people is, I want them to understand that every problem literally every problem has a solution. It doesn't matter how big the problem is. It has a solution. It might not be a nice one, but it's a solution. And so I'm glad that you recognize that, because that's truly what I try to achieve on our calls.
Yeah. And it's, so concrete is, I think it's one of the harder subcontractor trades, just because there's a lot of balls rolling with like if you have even just a simple pour, you've got your concrete trucks lined up. Each concrete truck has you have to have the right slump, and if there's too much water in one truck and not enough water in another one, you got to make sure, like, you're kind of the chemist of the job with trying to keep that together. And then you throw in there like a pump truck, and hopefully all of these guys come at the same time when you have concrete, because there's a limited amount of time going, and concrete's not cheap. You can have $20,000-$30,000 wrapped up in just a 3-hour pour. And then on top of that, you're hoping that the guys that you have employed, or if you're partnering up with another concrete contractor, that their guys show up at the right time when the concrete comes. So there's definitely a love-hate relationship that I think most concrete contractors share with the trade. But it is something that creates that resilience, and just being able to handle stress. And one of my favorite movie quotes, it's from The Count of Monte Cristo. And when the guy that's trying to escape, the older guy that's trying to escape. Have you seen the movie?
No, I don't have time for shows.
Oh, okay.
I just work.
Well, there's these two prisoners. One's like an older guy, and he's trying to escape, but he accidentally escapes into this other younger prisoner's room. And the younger prisoner is trying to impress the older prisoner, saying like that he's counted the blocks in his cell multiple times. And then the older guy leans down and says, "Yes, but have you named them yet?" It's just showing like this like it can get totally worse, but he ends up being like a comfort to the younger prisoner because of all this crap that he's been through. And so it really does, and like I said, construction in general, but it really does hone you a little bit from kind of like the mentality of like, hold my beer. I've been here plenty of times, and I can handle this stuff. And I think it's something that other industries don't offer you because it is construction is special in that sense.
Well, I think that there's nobody that has gotten to a place of success without going through a mountain of trials and tribulations. There's just no, there are very few people. I think unless they've been handed a golden spoon, you were handed a silver spoon, but sometimes a golden spoon will kind of mask those challenges that you need to go through in order to kind of, start creating your own spoon. So I think that you have to go through some shit to see the light on the other side. And I think that's unfortunately what most people always are trying to avoid. And then some people are just trying to lean into it and avoiding for help, avoiding, asking for support. And I think that's where failure is inevitable. When there's somebody across from you, like yourself, or me, that are capable of helping people through some of the challenges that they're experiencing. And so that kind of leads us into, your current construction company is LTA Builders. And so you specialize in commercial concrete, like you had mentioned. Where can they find your online platform on Instagram for that specific business?
Yeah, on Instagram at LTA Builders, and my website, ltabuilders.com is where you can find me.
Cool. So yeah, if anybody wants to see some of David's work in the concrete space, you can go check him out there. But David has a passion about business development and growing a business. And so, we're coming up towards this end of this episode, and I want to just kind of jump into this space. So David reached out to me a couple months ago about, inquiring about, what does it look like to enter into the coaching space? He's well-spoken, very articulate, very organized, obviously has built a successful business, has these tools and resources that he's implemented in his business. And he was like, what, dude, I'm thinking about coaching contractors for concrete. And I said, that's a brilliant idea. I think that any support in construction in any of these industries, drywall, painting, framing, concrete, when you specialize in those industries and you've got some tricks and that can be shared with other people, I think it's our duty to pass that on. And so David and I have been building out his next venture, which I'm excited to be a part of. And so David, we're still early into it, but what is not early into it is the systems. So David has a plethora of a suitcase of tactics that any concrete contractor could implement and see, the seven-figure potential opportunities. So, tell us a little bit about the coaching space. What are you hoping to achieve in that? And first, before you get into that, if you're looking to follow David's coaching program, we've got two spaces to follow him at. He has a personal page, and he also has a community that he's going to be building as well. So, what is the personal page, David?
It's at the concrete_coach on Instagram.
So you can go give him a follow there. And then the community that he is building is what's that one called?
It's at $1 Million Concrete Club. And that's the community that I'm building to give the support to concrete contractors in general. So
awesome. Okay. So let's talk about this. So I want to make sure we lean into this. If you're listening and you're a concrete contractor, or if you're a contractor and you know a concrete contractor and you've seen them struggle, and you've never heard them say, I built a 7-figure business in a short period of time off of the tail end of a bankruptcy, then they probably need to speak to David, because obviously what they're doing isn't working, and what David's system is obviously could significantly help them. So what is like one or two things that you're hoping to I guess achieve through coaching concrete contractors and offer?
Yeah, so I think a lot of concrete contractors, no one ever teaches us how to operate a business. That's not something that is taught in schools, and even in college, where like I have a bachelor's degree. But in any of the business development classes, it doesn't prepare you for what you'll actually engage with when you start your own business. And so, but in concrete and construction in general, I think you and I have been talking about this, how out of all of the industries, I've been in healthcare, I've been in finance, product development with traveling to China and whatnot. But by far, and this is one of the loves that I have of concrete and construction, where I think it's the easiest industry for a normal individual that has some construction skills to be able to become a millionaire. I think one of the barriers is it's hard work. And I think especially in this rising generation, that's a red flag to a lot of the rising generation. And so the guys that are part of it, they're a certain type of breed of person. And I say guys, but there's gals getting in on it as well. But when we're into that, there's nothing that is teaching us how to build a successful business. And essentially, because construction is, you can almost immediately find business, whatever trade you're in. It's essentially what you're building for yourself is a job, and it's a job where you're the boss, you're the one that sweeps the job sites, you're doing everything. And then as you're trying to grow that, these responsibilities just mount on top. And so we're locking ourselves into this space. Yes, we're not working for anybody else, and we're probably making more money than we would if we were working for somebody else. But we really lock ourselves into this realm. And I think that's where a lot of concrete contractors are at. They started this business. They're probably one of the finishers, or they operate the equipment on the prep, or run the hose on the pump, whatever it is. But they're in there, and then after they get done with a normal work day, they have to go back and do the estimates, and they have to run payroll and do all of this stuff. So one of the things that I help contractors achieve and have tons of different systems that I've built that I can put over onto them and help them with their business. But it's starting to systematize and get a lot of these responsibilities that are taking a lot of their time. And so helping them save some time with not like jobs that are, you can pay somebody or implement a system. There's AI that is so prevalent these days that these things can more than take 20-30% of the workload off of somebody immediately. And so that's one thing, probably the biggest benefit that I think these systems that I have will help concrete contractors with is saving a lot of time and then opening up some time to be able to do entrepreneurial things. But with that, with saving some time, and I saw this with myself when I was able to achieve, like take away 50% of my responsibilities and I had 50% of my time back, I actually had like a feeling of guilt go through me, because I'm sitting in the office making phone calls to estimators or doing relationship building type stuff, and even taking people golfing and taking people to lunch, and just feeling like crap because my crew was busting their tails on the job site. And so moving from that mentality of you are the entrepreneur of your business. You are no longer the concrete finisher or the equipment operator. You are the one that drives this thing. And frankly, you have the most important job, because if you don't drive it, your guys don't get jobs, they don't get the hours they need to support their families. And so there's that aspect afterwards as well. There's helping these concrete contractors go through that process, deal with what comes through later, and then helping them to implement those processes.
That's awesome. And there are hundreds of thousands of contractors, and specifically concrete contractors. There's a product, World of Concrete. Why would there be a space called World of Concrete? Because it's that big of an industry, that there are so many people that, and everywhere. It's some places they call it the concrete jungle. There's concrete everywhere. And so I think you're diving into a really good industry that will definitely have open arms for you. And one of the things I did want to mention was that I was chatting with my girlfriend about this the other day. There's all these different programs that are online. Ultimately, everybody's so hesitant. There's a percentage of people that are not hesitant. There's a percentage of people that are hesitant. And so if you're listening to this and you're one of those hesitant people, I'm going to call you out right now. And basically what I'm going to try to point at you is that if somebody puts a money back guarantee program in front of you, or all these different programs in front of you, and you don't do the work, you don't schedule your calls, you don't show up, you don't, put in the work, I've learned that the people that aren't successful or that cannot be successful in this industry are the ones that are avoiding the work that needs to be done. I did some data on the construction industry. There's over 600,000 contractors that are trying to make $1 million across North America. Over 600,000 contractors that are trying. There is 1% of them that actually are showing up, that are taking action. And there's a percentage of them that are playing the victim mentality that things don't work. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. Well, you know what? Without question, David possesses tools and skills that have propelled him to build a 7-figure business in a short period of time. And so those tools and systems, without question, would work for you in some capacity. And potentially in some capacity, you might be able to coach somebody that has, a higher level of grind and determination and is more systematized. And if he'd heard some of these systems, they'd probably even make more than 7 figures, And so what I'm saying to contractors is like, this coaching space that you're hearing about, that you're coming across, don't think that this shit doesn't work, because it works. It works for people that show up. And without question, David's program and his systems that he has available, that he's going to be putting in front of people will work. It's a matter of you, it's a matter, are you going to fucking do the work? And so when I was chatting with my girlfriend about this the other night, she said that she went into a program and at towards like middle to end of the program, and it's validated everything I was talking about. There's not, like, she's very successful, does a lot of great things, but kind of maybe lost interest because the work, the tasks were, right in front of her. It's like, you have to do this. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm not doing this right now, and so you can't expect change to progress unless you're willing to do it yourself. And so if you are a concrete contractor looking to seriously grow your business, I'm going to ask you this: are you willing to do the fucking work necessary outside of, running around in rubber boots, pouring fucking concrete? Are you willing to systematize your business and listen to David's systems to grow that 7-figure business? Because on another call that I had with a real estate professional, talked about visualizing these things that we want in our life. Want to take our family to Disney World, or we want to take our family, to a special place, or we want to buy our kids a special car, or we want to, give our kids a magical Christmas. Remember, all the contractors, they fight for their families. We talked about this. They fight for their families. So the next question is, are you willing to tell your kids that they can't do these things because you're too fucking lazy? Right? Are you willing to tell your kids that you can't go to Disney World because I'm not willing to do the work that, people like David and myself are willing to teach you? And that's where it really comes down to. It's like, you might be good at what you do, but when you really want to grow a business, the number one thing you can do that I've learned that I wish I would have had is a coach in my life. And, I'm glad, David, that you're venturing into this, because I think you're going to be very successful at it. And I think that a lot of the people that touch you and are connected to you and, your systems, will reap success, but only if they show up. That's the only people that are going to win, is the ones that fucking show up. And the ones that, play that victim mentality, they're going to struggle continuously over and over and over again. And the number one person, or the number one people that they can tell story to, is their family, because those are the people they're letting down.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Especially amongst concrete contractors, but there's like this nobility in having a really busy schedule. And I actually have a buddy like this. He is slammed. Our kids, my son is in the same piano program as his daughter. When I see his wife, because I go to the program because I have the time to do it, I go to the program and I see his daughter, and I look up on the front row next to his wife, and he's not there. And so he doesn't have a lot of these systems in place, but there is a mentality thinking that, well, this is the way it has to be. Like, as a contractor, you're supposed to work your ass off. You're supposed to work long hours, and that's the way it is. And I promise it's not. Like, businesses are meant to benefit our lives, not to suck the life out of us. And I think that's a mentality that a lot of us have to break, is thinking that it has to be the certain way. It really doesn't. And but you've got to have these higher trajectories, like be at the freaking piano recital, because there are systems in place that you can be there and still make that amount of money, if not more. And it really does take a determination to be like, do you want to keep this current lifestyle? Do you want to keep spending, 17, 18 hours a day just grinding away at this business? Because it doesn't have to be like that.
No, it doesn't. And, going to piano recital and that type of stuff, it means so much. I'm not doing construction anymore, just the coaching now. So I do have a lot more control of my schedule and my free time. And my top priority is my kids. The other day I was at my daughter's practice. And so she just like nonchalantly just throws it out. Both my kids play hockey, and my son's venturing into welding, which I've talked about a lot. We're actually going to be touring the university here coming up this week. But my daughter says, "Are you going to come to my practice?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, for sure. Like, you're going to watch me?" Yeah, I'll watch you. I was like one of three parents there watching a practice, because everyone goes to the games, but it's like to be there to support them is so powerful and so impactful, and it really, like, my kids and I, we have an incredible bond that's unbreakable, and it's because I show up to the things that are the most important to them. I put their needs before mine. And I think a lot of people need to understand that, again, when we talked about that, why is it important to hire a coach? Whether it's concrete or construction, what you will get from, either myself or David is the ability to put your family first. And you'll get that freedom to give them, everything that they're striving, that you want them to achieve in life. And so I think this was dude, this was a great conversation. We could probably talk for hours, but I think we'll call it at this. And again, if you're looking to work with David, dude, what's the personal page again?
The concrete_coach Instagram.
Yeah, so if you want to work with David, you shoot him a DM, and I promise you, it'll change your life. Get a coach in your life. If it's not me or David, find somebody. And then if it doesn't work for you, okay, it's only because you're probably not showing up. If somebody's giving you one-on-one support, if somebody's giving you systems that they've implemented into their business prior, and it's grown, and it's helped other people, it's probably you. So show up, put in the work, be the 1% or greater, and your family will experience life the way you've been dreaming of giving it to them. So I appreciate this, David.
Yeah, in fact,
anything else?
Yeah, one of my mentors, Jim Anderson, he's a real estate developer, but one of the litmus tests for if you're treating your family like if you have a good work balance relationship is Jim. His kids, when they were younger at school, the teachers would ask, "Hey, what does your dad do for a living?" And when his teacher came up and said, "We asked your son that, and he said that you're unemployed." And Jim makes millions of dollars every year, but he is constantly with his family. That's his number one thing. But I think that's something that I want to achieve, is like, if my kid goes to school, like, I'm around him so much that he's just like, I think my dad, I think he watches TV for a living or something, just and still just making a ton of money because I have these awesome systems in place. But pretty good test on if we're having that good balance. So
I've never heard that one before. That is awesome. What does your parent do? He's unemployed, but he's always around, and somehow the fridge is full. We've got nice things, and life is great. But I mean, I think he's unemployed. I'm not exactly sure. That's that's awesome. Dude, great conversation. Excited to continue working with you. And if another thing here, if you are a contractor that specializes in a portion of your business, you've systematized things, and you're like, you know what, I think that I could help other people. I am going to be opening it up to helping other industries as well, helping them kind of build some other coaches that are specific to a specific industry. So, if you're a drywall painter, any of these specific industries, and you're really looking to grow, just shoot me a DM, and we'll see what works out. The reason I chose to work with David was because he knew what he was talking about, and he can make a big impact. And I know that he can be successful in it, and I know that he can create a lot of impact with what he's doing, and so that's important to me. But if you are interested in playing in that space, shoot me a DM, and we'll see if you're a good fit. But honestly, dude, great conversation. Appreciate you, and
as
we'll
always,
see you on our next call.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brandon. See ya.
All right, that concludes this episode of the Onsite Podcast. Remember, if you enjoyed this episode, please pay the tax, share the show. Guys, if you want to be a part of the Elite Builder Society, all you got to do is pay $49 a month. That's it. $49 a month. You get 20 group coaching calls every month. Okay? Go to ebsworks.com and register today. If you enjoyed the show, please pay the tax and share the show.